meet this beautiful girl, Miriam. So she hooks up with this guy, Marvin, right? All he does is drink all day, play video games, does drugs. I mean, he's a loser. Her family tried to warn her about him for years, but she wasn't having it. She loved him, stayed with him. He was very possessive of her, always tracking her on her phone. Her friend said sometimes he would pinch her on her arm super hard, leaving bruises. He would do it right in front of him. He didn't even care. But do you think she left him? Do you think that was enough for her to realize he was a bad dude and get away from him? No, not at all. You want to know what she did? She went and got pregnant by him. Remember when I told you she was smart? I meant book smart. Everything just got worse. He just kept drinking, kept controlling her life. Her parents felt like they were losing control of their daughter, so they offered to let them move in. They got to see firsthand how Marvin treated their beautiful Miriam. One day, he started choking Miriam. And thank God, at the last minute, right as she was turning blue and her eyes were rolling back in her head, her dad walked in the room and shoved Marvin off of Miriam. The next day, they made her go to the police, and she did, and she filed a report. But then the following day after that, Marvin talked her into canceling that report. Her parents told her if she stayed with him, only bad things could happen. I mean, this is starting to get really ridiculous. And they begged and they pleaded for her to stay away. But she didn't listen. She wanted to have a perfect little family with her Marvin. So her parents made them move out. Shortly after, they got another place, and 11 days later, Marvin calls 911 saying that Miriam was dead on the floor. The cops show up and find that she's bruised all over her body. The autopsy report showed that she died from brain injury and that she was strangled with bare hands. Immediately following this, Marvin was arrested. After the investigation, it came to light that he pushed her around the bathroom and choked her out and then slammed her on the ground. At the trial, witnesses testified to years of abuse from Marvin. He pleaded not guilty, trying to say that Miriam slipped on the floor. But with all the evidence and the fact that he called his mom and sister and they came over and cleaned up the bathroom as Miriam is dying in the emergency room just a mile away, the jury had no problem finding him guilty. They sentenced him to 50 years in prison, and they ordered him to pay $700,000 to Miriam's family. All of his appeals have been denied, so it is in prison where he will die. Miriam, you're a beautiful soul, but girl, you should have listened. Tragic. This famous commentator, John Hunt, was at a horse race. His daughter called the cops as there had been an intruder that had shot her sister, and her mother. The cops showed up at the house and her mom was already dead, so was her sister. These were great people with great lives. One of them was an RN, the other one was a successful dog groomer. The town was devastated. The cops started looking everywhere, and they only knew that the killer had a crossbow. They used dogs and drones. They finally spotted Kyle in a graveyard. When they closed in on him, he tried to use the crossbow on himself. He was in the hospital for 10 weeks, but then he recovered. He was trained in the military and knew how to kill someone. After investigation, it was concluded that when Hannah and him broke up, she made a list to herself of things to remember next time she thought about being with him. Even though he acted like he was cool with the breakup, he was planning on killing her the whole time. They got him on camera getting a crossbow. He even bought a Glock, but it didn't show up to the house in time. He got a knife, rope. They got him buying gas. His plan was to kill her and then burn the house down. He didn't realize the mom and the other sister. They were just kind of innocent bystanders. He also found notes planning the events. When he was questioned, all he said was no comment. He pleaded guilty. He had 3 life sentences plus 30 years. Oh yeah, they're gonna love him in prison. All young and fresh looking. This week, girl thought she was gonna go smoke a joint behind the building, ended up getting sliced up as a cult ritual sacrifice. In Knoxville in the 90s, you got this girl, Krista, alright? Her dad was never around, her mom was a drunk. When her mom died, she started using drugs, got in trouble for theft, ended up at this place called Job Corps where you try to better yourself. At this Job Corps, she met this guy. He was into dark, occult, devil worshiping stuff. Anyway, they fell in love, and they were inseparable. There was this other girl, Colleen. Krista did not like Colleen at all, became obsessed with her as a threat. Krista would go around telling people, Colleen needs to go. She's mean. But Colleen wasn't mean. So they figured out a plot, told her they were going to go smoke a joint out back, invited her to go, and then when they got behind the building, Krista started attacking her with a box cutter, sliced her all up, drew pentagrams on her chest, other occult symbols all over her body. The detective said it was a horrible scene where she kept trying to get away, but the dude would just hold her and not let her go, allowing Krista to keep slicing her more and more. Blood was everywhere. And then after, Krista, like an idiot, goes around school bragging about how she has a piece of this girl's skull. Yeah, she used a piece of cement to smash her skull open and took a piece of it with her. So when students heard this, they freaked out. Obviously, they called the cops. So the cops started investigating and found out 4 of them had left, only 3 of them had come back. So they all got questioned, and they all 3 crumbled. They couldn't tell on each other fast enough. In her dorm room, they found a piece of skull, and then they found the body in a brushy area. It's pretty much over now. Yeah, she was smiling the first day of court. Shadala turned state witness, though, and told every little detail. Krista knew she was in trouble, tried to blame her childhood. And the dude, he just said no comment. After only 1 hour, jury found her guilty, and they ordered her to be put to death by electrocution. Ooh, they gonna fry her like a chicken nugget. You ain't smiling now, are ya? After the sentence, she started shouting. The judge was like, shut your mouth and get out of my face, and kicked her out of the courtroom. Dude got 15 years. Shadala only got probation because of her testimony. Krista will be the youngest woman ever put to death by electric chair. Poor Colleen. My heart really goes out to you and your family. You're doing nothing wrong, just trying to better your life, and ended up being a sacrifice. Do you think justice was served? Let me tell you about this really close family. They lived in Carnation, a really tight community. Their mom worked her butt off at USPS. Their dad, a designer. He was the best. The son was a golden boy, and everyone knew it. The daughter, the black sheep, and she was put through it. The son had a family and a lovely wife. The daughter still at home, causing nothing but strife. Her boyfriend was a drug addict, and they were up all night, mostly pissed off at her brother and his perfect little life. When mom was finally done with their bullshit, she said, you can start paying me the full rent. So they conjured up a plan, and it was too crystal. First thing her boyfriend did was purchase 2 pistols. The next day, Christmas Eve, was supposed to be a celebration, but by the end of the night, it was total devastation. They showed up with presents like everything was okay, and then they pulled out guns and started firing away. Both of her parents were shot, waltzed, screaming. Then the 2 freaked out and started cleaning. They threw their parents in a shed out back and waited for her brother's family to come so they could attack. Shortly after her brother arrives, he had no clue the horror his parents' house would hide. They walked in expecting to see his parents so caring, but saw nothing but his sister and boyfriend, guns drawn and glaring. Shots rang out as he screamed to his kids goodbye. They shot his whole family in their chins and their eyes. But the wife had a chance to call 911 before she died. The cops surrounded the house and it was a bloody mess. With no other option, they had to surrender and confess. She said abuse from her brother had made her mind tainted. He said it was all her idea. He was manipulated. The judge laughed so hard he almost cried. He slapped them both with 6 guilty counts of homicide. And life with no parole in prison as well, they'll reside. Such a tragedy for so many good people. The whole town prayed under their steeple. Thank you for making it through the guts and gory. Maybe you should subscribe if you like these kinds of horror stories. Back again with another story to tell. This girl was locked in a box and she went through hell. Our story begins down in the Mississippi when this cute little couple was taking a little trip. All in love and calling each other honey, they were super excited to get to Greg's to pick up their money. They arrived at the house at a little past 8, unaware of the evil that was about to seal their fate. So when the time came to ask about his bread, Ben popped out of nowhere and shot him right in the head. Brooke freaked out. She thought they were just there to talk. But Gary had other ideas. He put her locked in a box. Before we go further, I have to stop, because you're going to get sick of what makes Greg's heart throb. His ex-wife said she found a bunch of his short stories, all filled with kidnapping, death, and gory. Now forward to Brooke. She's stuck locked in that box in her own horror story. When the phone was ringing and no one picked up but the answering tape, she told herself, shit, this is my only time to escape. She started banging the box as hard as she could. Eventually, those joints gave out on that weak-ass wood. Grabbing a butcher knife, she ran away. She knew in her heart, boy, today was not the day. The victim's dad said, "Let me see my son. I love him to pieces." The cop said, "No, sorry, bro." They chopped him into 88 pieces. Both of the assailants turned themselves in. Ben blamed Gary, and Gary just grinned. Ben got life in prison, so he was able to rest. Not for Gary, though. Nope. They put his sick ass right to death. If you enjoy stories that scare and fright, then how about you give this horror story a like? This is the story of Holly Osborne. She shot her husband dead after finding there was another he adored. A 911 call from Holly was placed. She said she woke up to her husband shot in the face. She was looking like a crackhead during the interrogation. She said she woke up to him dead and was filled with anticipation. The detective said, "What about those scratches on your arm?" Holly said, "It happens all the time. No need for alarm." He said, "We know he has been getting angry lately, and you don't sleep in the same bed." She said, "During sex, he hits and spanks me. One time, he even hit me in the head." He said, "But when you found him, you did nothing. I thought you were a nurse." She said, "I was in total shock. All I could do was stand there and clench my purse." He said, "Your .38 caliber was definitely used, and it is 3 rounds missing." She said, "This is starting to feel like abuse, and you're making me very pissy." The detective said, "I need to check for gun residue under your finger." She said, "You could search anything you want. Don't let it linger." Then he said, "We still have some questions yet," but she was done talking. She got up and left. The next thing she did was empty their bank accounts, and this seemed suspicious. So they questioned her for her account, but her answers were totally fictitious. The detective said, "Look, your DNA is the only one found on the gun." She said, "Well, check again, that's impossible, hun." He said, "Look, we know you shot him. Just let it go." She said, "That just didn't happen. No. He said, "All the evidence points to you and it ties. And in all my experience, evidence doesn't lie." She said, "I could give 2 cents. I want a lawyer, sweetie pie." Sad without enough evidence, they had to watch her walk away. A year later, back with new evidence, they were back and here to stay. The investigation of the phone data brought to light Chris had actually met a girl a couple weeks back on a dating site. At night, as he passed out without hesitation, Holly went through his phone for a thorough examination. I don't know what she was expecting, but she found where Chris and his new girl had been sexting. Fed up with his years of bullshit and lies, she pulled out her gun and shot him right between the eyes. Knowing the killing was done out of spite, the judge slapped her with 18 years to life. With such a light sentence, some folks were perturbed. Tell me if you think justice was served. One night, 2 men ripped Eve Carson from her home and didn't leave a single clue. Driven and focused, Eve Carson was an outstanding student. She volunteered at her local nursing home. She also helped out at food and homeless shelters. She graduated high school with honors and then went to University of North Carolina. At the age of 22, in her final year of college, one night her roommates wanted to go to a party. Eve instead stayed home to study. When her friends got back from the party around 4 a.m., they knew something was wrong. The front door was wide open and Eve was gone. After trying to call her with no response, they immediately called the cops. Earlier that morning, around 5 a.m., a woman had also called the cops, saying she heard sounds of gunshots. When the cops investigated the scene, they found Eve's body shot several times. They also found Eve's car and her computer, but after searching both, there were no leads. The police traced Eve's credit cards and found there were withdrawals. After looking at the ATM surveillance footage, they found their suspects. The cops tracked the suspects to a gas station where they immediately arrested them. The 2 suspects, Demario Atwater, had a long record, and his accomplice, Lawrence, was a minor. After they were arrested, they both denied everything, but the phone data put both of the boys at Eve's house during the time of the incident. DeMario was going to get the death penalty, so he took a plea deal and gave the details of the case and got life in prison plus 30 years. Lawrence was a minor, and he got life without the possibility of parole. The appeals court thought this was too harsh, so they retried his case, and the judge again found him guilty and gave him life without the possibility of parole. They will both rot in jail for the rest of their days. The University of North Carolina made a scholarship in Eve's honor. The state of North Carolina made a new law for gang offenses, making the punishments much, much harsher. Thank you for watching. This girl's co-worker snuck in her house and installed cameras. This is Carolyn, a very smart girl. She went to Lafayette College. She got 3 bachelors. She got a job at a marketing firm. She's not messing around. She was 26 years old and headed for the top. But one day when she went home on her lunch break, it would be the last time anyone ever saw her. Her coworkers got nervous after she didn't return from her lunch break and called the cops. So the cops, they went to her house. Fortunately, her door was open. When they went in her door, they found Carolyn dead on the ground, lying in a pool of blood. The house reeked of bleach. The autopsy revealed it was blunt force trauma and multiple stab wounds that had killed Carolyn. Whoever had done this had some deep personal rage. With all her boyfriends in the clear, they started looking at coworkers. And what do you know what? There was also a coworker who was late from coming back to work that day. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal because he always leaves for his lunch. So when the cops dug deeper, he said that he had car problems. So when they checked to see if he actually went to the mechanic, they found that he had lied. He also had unexplained scratches on his hand. With enough of this circumstantial evidence, the cops went ahead and made an arrest. While he was in jail, the cops got a tip from an inmate who was approached by Kenneth. He told him that he wanted him to kill the lead investigator in the same manner, stabbing him with scissors and a screwdriver, and then trying to clean the scene with bleach afterwards. These were only details that the killer would know. With this new evidence brought to light, they were going to give him the death penalty. Scared like a little girl, he confessed to everything, and he told him exactly what had happened. Shortly after working with Carolyn, he began falling deeply in love with her. He became very obsessed. When she turned him down and pretty much let it be known there would never be anything between them, he just could not take it. On his lunch breaks, he would go to her house. He installed cameras, and he would go by and check them periodically, just snoop around and sniff her underwear and other weird things. And this went on for a little while, until one day, smart little Carolyn had a suspicion maybe something was going on and decided to go home on her lunch break. Well, that day, she caught Kenneth snooping around. And as soon as he saw her, he knew there was no excuse he could give her. So he grabbed a hammer and hit her in the head and then stabbed her until she was dead. With this confession, they gave him a lighter sentence of only 87 years. So no matter what, that creep is still gonna spend forever in prison. Carolyn Byington, may you rest in peace. Are you gonna let this killer get away with murder? Our story begins in New York with Miss Ellen Ray Greenberg. A beautiful soul, talented athlete. She always wanted to be a teacher, and she accomplished those dreams. And she loved her students. She soon met Sam Goldberg, a very, very wealthy guy. His brother was the biggest attorney in town. His family owned several large businesses. You could say he was connected. Sam would like you to believe that one day he just came home from the gym to find the door locked from the inside. He pounded on the door several times. No answer. So he broke the door in with his shoulder. Once inside, he found Ellen stabbed and on the floor in a pool of blood. First, he called his lawyer. The lawyer shows up. Who knows what happened? Then an hour later, he decides to call 911. When the 911 operator tells him to do simple things like check for a pulse, he's talking to her saying things like, I don't even think that's necessary, I'm not doing that. When the cops showed up to do the investigation, they missed several key things like collecting the trash from the trash bins around the complex. They moved the body around. She had 28 stab wounds in the front of her and also in the back of her, and they still ruled it a suicide. Get the fuck out of here. Her family was like, well, if it was a suicide, where's the note? All of Ellen's friends says that her behavior changed as soon as she had moved in with Sam. The forensic report showed that half of the stab wounds were from the back. Yo, how do you stab yourself in the back? So they tried to change it from a suicide to a homicide, and the case was reopened and the case was dismissed. So then a new DA picked up the case, and he sent in a piece of her spinal cord, and it showed that she was actually paralyzed from the first blow. So how would you continue to stab yourself if you're paralyzed from the neck down? So the case was reopened again, and once again, the case was dismissed. And now Sam Goldberg has a new wife, a new life, and walking around free like nothing has happened. I mean, this is all just stipulation, but you tell me if this isn't a case of where your connections and your money trump all. Come on, internet, do your thing. Ellen Ray Greenberg, hopefully your death will not be in vain. Let me tell you about this slut named Sasha. She flirted with the wrong one. She was 27 years old, very successful, top manager at her company, a very hard worker. She had a very nice apartment in a very nice part of town. One night she went to the nightclub with all of her friends. They had a great time, popping bottles, teasing all the fellas trying to approach. She was known as promiscuous, always flirting, giving the dudes the wink, using her looks to get what she wanted. You know what I'm talking about. After leaving the club with her friends, they all kind of split ways like they normally do. But when she didn't show up for brunch the next morning, they all knew something was wrong. They tried to call her, but there was no response. So they called 911. The cops broke down her door, and what did they find? Sasha, brutally attacked, dead on the floor. There were signs of a struggle. She was covered in abrasive wounds. Her phone, jewelry, they were all missing. At first, it looked like a robbery. The cops grabbed her phone, and she had sent one last text before she died, and it simply said the word Ben. That's her boyfriend. So the cops questioned him and checked out his phone data, but he was not considered a suspect as his alibi checked out. The only other person she had come in contact with was a security guard named Steven. Steven said Sasha had forgotten her keys and needed help. He had let her in, and then that was the last he had seen of her. She left a little bit later with some unknown man. So the cops scurried the CCTV footage only to find there was no unknown man. It was only her and some weird actions by the security guard, Steven. So they pulled him into a second interview. They made him take a polygraph. So they started asking him all these questions. How did she die? Electrocution? Was she drowned? And when they got to strangulation, the way she was actually murdered, his heart started jumping like a circus clown. And there was also a couple other things wrong with old Steven. Before he left, he took a piss in her toilet, and there was a thumbprint of his thumb on her toilet seat. Also, his phone data put him inside her apartment at the time of the murder. So they arrested him and charged him with first-degree murder, sexual battery, and burglary. The DA was searching for the death penalty. They wanted to fry his ass and set an example. So he gave his first witness account to get a lesser charge. He explained to the detective having to be Sasha's security guard was torture. Every day when she would come in and every day when she would leave, the little winks, the little gestures, it was just too much. He didn't know if she wanted to be with him. He would sit up at night thinking of how they would be together. It was driving him crazy. There was nothing left he could do. When he finally was able to be inside her apartment with her, just the feeling overcame him and he did not know what to do. So he just grabbed her and killed her and raped her and finally was able to fulfill that need that had been brewing for years. It's very unfortunate what happened to Sasha. We only hope her soul went to heaven. This nursing student never made it home. It was her final day at the maternity ward, as she had just finished a bunch of courses. She had plans to go to Reno, but she never was able to make that trip. Let's start at the beginning. It's the final day at the maternity ward, and she's having this little party with her friends. She's gathering up her stuff, but she has to go to her car to give her coworkers a gift. She runs out to the car, leaving her bag and jacket inside of the hospital. After about an hour, she still wasn't back. Coworkers grew concerned. So they went out to search the parking garage where she parked her car, and her car was not there. As they started to go back inside, what did you know it? Her car came back in the parking garage, but she was not in it. It was some unknown driver, and the car stopped for a moment, and the coworkers started flagging down the car, and the car just sped off. So the coworkers immediately flocked to the police station. The police found blood in the parking spot where her car was. Later, her car and her bag were found a few blocks later, abandoned. Seemingly a couple hours later, friends started getting texts saying, "I'm okay, there's nothing wrong." But her friends knew this was off. So they put out a reward. It started off at $10,000, then went to $65K, and then eventually went to $100,000K with all the donations from their friends and family. So the police started backtracking, and one name kept coming up: Giselle. Giselle hated Michelle because Michelle was friends with her boyfriend Scott. At first, Scott was a suspect, but his alibis and allowing the cops to search his phone showing that he was in the clear. But what did the cops find in his phone? Messages from Giselle popping off threats. So they went and questioned Giselle. Giselle claimed that she was sick and at a different hospital at the time of the murder. So the cops secretly put a GPS on her to watch her every move. They also went to her house and went through her trash. And then out of nowhere, Scott just finds Michelle's phone mysteriously in the back of his car. The cops knew it was put there by Giselle. They also used CCTV footage and caught Giselle using the fake ID badge, sneaking in trying to find Michelle's schedule. It was the one sending those fake texts to all the family and friends. Then the cops found Giselle's DNA on Michelle's steering wheel, and that pretty much wrapped everything up. When they got Giselle's phone, they found computer searches on how to poison someone, how to induce a heart attack. Nearly 3 months later, they found Michelle's body. Unfortunately, it was only the bones they found in the foothills of the San Francisco Bay Area. Giselle was immediately arrested. Giselle tried to claim a fight broke out, but the DA knew this was a lie. During the trial, she had no emotions. She wouldn't take the stand. It was like she didn't care. But the investigation showed that she posed as a student to gain access to a fake ID card. She walked around the hospital during the day as if she were a student, but then came back at night in a white doctor's coat and went specifically to the office and got Michelle's weekly schedule. Then lured her to the garage with a text message. As soon as she got to her car, Giselle strangled Michelle. She was found guilty of first-degree murder and was sentenced to 25 years to life. You will rot in prison, you dirty soul, for destroying such an angel. Michelle, you'll never be forgotten. This is the tale of Ava Mooring. Ava is beautiful, and she will beat your ass. She's always been a little scrapper ever since an early age. But after this one particular fight, shots rang out. So the cops were called, evidence was gathered, Ava was brought in for questioning. She simply stated how she was just trying to fire warning shots into the air, and that she only pulled the gun out when everyone else became aggressive. Someone called in and they did a police interview over the phone with a witness who stated that she had a clear shot at the window and the bullet went straight towards the victim. So the cops pressed her harder on the details of the situation, making her draw out the scene. In the video, you can even see her pushing the victim. So after drawing it out, the cop was still unsatisfied with what she was saying because it didn't make sense. So to prove his case, he showed her pictures and videos that she did not even know existed. All of the evidence, it was pretty much a given. She tried to play Little Miss Gangster that night and ended up killing 3 people. She got 3 counts of murder, and she was sentenced to 15 years behind bars. You're not so bad now, getting passed around that prison cell like a pack of ramen noodles. Our hearts go out to the victims that lost their life in this terrible incident. Let me tell you the tale of how this sex worker became a superhero. First of all, If you're new here, I'd like to say welcome. Welcome to the community. We talk about all kinds of crime here. It goes on and on. But basically, I'm a true crime storytelling channel dedicated to exploring the darkest corners of real life mysteries. So when you feel I have earned it, go ahead and give me your subscription and join the community. Now, let's get to the story. This is Heather. She's a hardworking girl. She has her own place, her own vehicle. She works as a bartender. But where she lives in Charleston, West Virginia, sometimes it's hard making ends meet. So Heather does a little escorting on the side. Nothing wrong with it. Girl, make that money. I had to do a little dancing back in my day. Anyway, like I was saying, times were tough. She was tired. She was broke. And then the phone rang. It was a guy asking for her services. She was a little hesitant at first because she could sense a little weirdness on the phone, but she desperately needed money. So she agreed and gave him the address. He pulled up in about an hour in his gold Subaru. He greeted her at the door with a smile. She allowed him into her place. As soon as she closed the door, he pulled out a gun and said, "Look, I'm going to jail for a long time. I'm either going for rape or I'm going for murder. The choice is up to you." And then he grabbed her by her neck, snatched her up. She couldn't even breathe. All she was trying to do was get her fingers out from underneath her neck. He just raked her across the room like a little rag doll. He was squeezing her so tight. As she landed on the table, she landed right beside this yard rake that she used to clean up cat poop. So she grabbed the rake and smacked him with it. He put the gun on the table to get a better grip, and that's when she grabbed the gun and shot him right between the eyes. Terrified, she screamed and ran out of the house, barefoot down the street with blood on her. The neighbors saw this and they called the cops. The cops showed up and she was shaking and frantically crying, obviously devastated from what had just happened. The cops searched his car, and you will not believe what they found inside. You could basically call it a serial killer kit. I mean, it had everything. It had 4 sets of handcuffs, and I mean the good handcuffs, not the little cheap kind. 3 different kinds of hatchets, a sledgehammer, an axe, a battle axe, a knife, a shovel, a utility knife, 3 bottles of bleach, cleaning sponges, duct tape, large Super Duty trash bags, a firearm, a super large tub that a woman could easily fit inside, also a bulletproof vest. The cops also seized his phone and used his data to search where he had been, and they started putting together that all the places that he had been were also places girls had been missing. I mean, within 3 and 4 feet of his phone. It was obvious that he was a serial killer. When they finally tracked down all the women, it was over 12 girls in 9 different states. Basically, he would go to a new location, go to the library at this place, use Backpage or Craigslist, write down the names of prostitutes and their numbers, and then he would just go down the list, calling one after another, until one would respond. And when he would show up, it would be the same thing. He would grab them by their neck and strangle them. So Heather's soul, she's a hero. She's a goddamn hero. Thank you, Heather. Thank you for ending the life of this worthless piece of crap. Think about how many girls' lives you have saved, including your own. Yeah, the world owes you a debt of gratitude. Heather Soul. Let's everybody give it up one time for my girl Heather. I hope you liked that story. You know, I'm always trying to improve my channel. If you don't mind, you could leave me a comment and tell me what you don't like with my videos. That way I can get a little bit better. Don't worry, you ain't gonna hurt my feelings. Here's your 30-second crime quickie. Yo, this is Tiffany. She's married to Chris. They have their own studio as massage therapist. Chris had an affair a few years back. Tiffany found out, but never forgot. After Tiffany met this new guy named Jake, she thought a divorce would be a piece of cake. Chris said, "Please, I'll try anything." Tiff said, "No, not even counseling. I'm done with the way you put your hands on me." Chris said, "Well, if I can't have you, no one can." Then he taped her mouth and he tied her hands. He chopped her up into 16 pieces after shooting her in the head. There was blood in all the creases as he tried to hide her in his shed. The cops showed up with a search warrant saying, "We already know what you did. Put your hands behind your back. We're arresting you, kid." During the trial, he lied with all his might as the judge slapped him with 25 years to life. Rest in peace, Tiffany Morrison. Wait till you hear this tragic story. You got this girl, Randy. Everyone loved her. She had a great life, great childhood. At college, she met this asshole named Brian. She loved him. Right before they were married, he found out that he had multiple sclerosis. Most girls would have ran from a situation like this, but not Randy. Nope. She stood by his side, vowed to be with him forever and take care of him no matter what. So they got married, got a house, and for years, everything seemed okay. Then one morning, Randy was found dead. The house had looked like a robbery gone wrong. Stuff was tossed everywhere, jewelry was stolen. But other than that, there's really no evidence. She had no enemies. Cops were pretty baffled. After her death, Brian started going on crazy shopping sprees, which were very suspicious. Then they found her body in a shallow grave. So they brought Brian in and questioned him. And this time, his story had changed a little bit. So they tapped his phone. And what did they discover? He had a best friend named Blaine. Blaine was filming horror movies. Brian wanted in on the action. Blaine had racked up about 20 grand in debt trying to film this movie. Brian had plenty of money and wanted to help his friend, but he knew Randy would get in the way and not let him spend that kind of money. He also told the cops he was frustrated for years and years Randy would keep him from spending any kind of money because of his multiple sclerosis would get bad one day and she needed the money to cover all of his medical fees. So these two dumbasses concocted a plan to kill Randy, take the insurance money, pay off the debt for the movie, finish making the movie, and he would just have this life of luxury. But that didn't work out too well for you, did it? When the cops showed up at Blaine's house, he fainted like a little bitch. They were both tried for murder, and they were both sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. We all know what kind of life these two tarts are gonna have in prison, don't we? Randy, it's people like you that make this world a better place. Hope you liked my content. We'll be seeing each other again soon. This is the saddest story ever. Meet Gemma, would do anything for anyone. She had her own apartment and lived on the 5th floor, but because she was disabled, she was unable to get the resources that she needed, and she lived in squalor. People Gemma thought were her friends were actually using and abusing her. They eventually moved in with her, tied her up. I mean, this was horrible. Banged her head against the toilet, cleaned her up, took her outside, stabbed and stomped her to death. An almost identical story. I'd like you to meet Jennifer, another sweet soul. Her friends actually turned out to be the Greensburg 6 groups, and she went through 3 days of torture. They beat her. They made her write her own suicide note to try to cover their tracks. They then beat her with crutches and stuffed her in a trash can. But justice was served, as now they're all in jail, rotting. Sweet Jennifer and Gemma, we hope that your inner beauty can carry on in this world. May you rest in peace. You think this girl is a sweet angel? Or you think she's a murderer? Our story starts with these two getting arrested in Mexico for some marijuana, during which at the same time, his mother has been missing for a week. So the cops do a welfare check. They search her entire house. They said the house was messy. It looked like she hadn't been there in a week. So when the cops start questioning Caitlin, of course she starts giving story after story, lying about everything, acting like everything's all good. So the cops show her text messages like, "Yo, it says right here that you're the killer. What did you do with his mom?" Caitlin just blew it off like, "Man, my ex-boyfriend always hacks my phone." So the detectives pretty much dropped the hammer. They're like, "Look, we know you did it. We know she's dead. Now's your time to talk." Being young and naive, she knew she was caught. She started talking quicker than a church on Sunday morning. She confessed to how she strangled his mother and then smashed her in the head with a rock. And she also killed someone in Arizona and set 2 arsons. Jonathan wanted to kill her, but he just didn't have the guts to do it, so Caitlin did it for him. Your boy Jonathan got murder, felonious assault, aggravated burglary, aggravated robbery, and he was sentenced with life in prison. Your girl Caitlin got aggravated murder, tampering with evidence, abuse of a corpse, and she was also sentenced to life in prison. She deserves to rot in there every day. Carrying Nicole's body was never found, but her amazing smile will never be forgotten. If you enjoy my stories, give me a little like. Hi, this is Shelly, and a beautiful, amazing soul. And she married this guy named Rod, but he was a big asshole. Together, they had 2 beautiful kids, but one of which they had to have with a donor egg. Regardless, they loved both of their kids just the same. Rod, however, used to make fun of his wife, the fact that she had to use a donor egg for their second child, while he was off having an affair. Anyway, she found out about the affair and made Rod move across the hall, and his life just started spiraling downward. He lost all his money, he lost all his jobs, he began to kind of go a little evil. He began stalking her, stalking the kids, began threatening her. Eventually, all he got was supervised visits. And then after this, the mother decided to just take him out of the will completely. And then 2 weeks later, she was found dead, face down in a bathtub by her daughter. As soon as the medical examiner saw this, he wanted to do an autopsy. But unfortunately, she was Jewish and her parents said no autopsy. But then there were questions, like she never liked baths, she just got her hair dyed so she wouldn't be taking a bath. So with this evidence, they dug that body right back up. And guess what? After doing a full autopsy, it was found that her neck was crushed as if someone were strangling her from behind. Combine that with her eyes being totally bloodshot, it was definitely confirmed that she was strangled. And after his lover stepped forward with recordings of him trying to kill his wife and coming up with ways to burn the house down, etc., etc., it didn't take the DA long. And then while he was in jail, he was even showing people how he strangled his wife, and he got that on camera. Oh yeah, he was sentenced to 25 to life. Bye, buddy. Welcome to this quiet small town of Martinsburg, where there lived this innocent and naive girl named Riley. She had a boyfriend named Hayden. The last night she was alive, she sent 2 text messages to her boyfriend saying that her stepdad, Andy, was in the room, and then a couple moments later, that she was scared. Her mom worked 2 jobs, so when she came home, she went to sleep and didn't really check on Riley. But when they had not heard from her by that evening, the search began. Andy, who said he was going to go out and help look, never did. Riley's real dad told the cops how Andy was a drug addict. Friends of Riley also stated how she was scared of her stepdad. During the interrogation, Andy obviously lied about everything, looking like a crackhead. When they found the body, it looked like the clothes were taken off and then had been tried to be put back on. And then the mom came forward and says when he's on drugs, he's sex crazy and she can't control him. In court, he tried to plead not guilty. And after all the evidence and dad crying to the jury, it only took them 20 minutes to find him guilty of murder. And he was sentenced to life without parole. You deserve every minute in there, you sick You guys want more crime? Give me a like. This is a story of Rachel Barber, a shy and introverted girl, but she loved to dance. She was a dancing fool. You couldn't get her to stop dancing growing up. In fact, the family even pulled up the carpet in the living room so she could practice better. Everything in her life was great. Every morning she was given a lift to the train station by her dad, but on one particular day she told her friends she was going to make a lot of money at this new modeling job. At lunch, her boyfriend asked her about it and she was very vague, but she just said she was going to be with an old friend. Later that night, her mom became worried when father and daughter had not come home. 2 hours later, dad had called and said that Rachel had never shown back up to their normal spot when she got off the train. They called the cops, but the cops were like, "Don't worry, she'll just be back soon. She probably just ran off with some friends." Dad was pissed and he knew something was wrong. Parents called all their friends, and after trying to get the cops involved again, they still wouldn't help. So the parents made posters, and with the help of the pissed off neighbors, they posted posters all around the neighborhood. The cops knew they were looking like assholes, so they finally jumped in. They wanted information on everybody. One of Rachel's friends named Allison called in and said she saw her with with a girl that night. So they reviewed the CCTV footage. A friend of theirs named Caroline, who also used to babysit for the family, kept popping up as if she had called before and after the incident. After asking friends of Caroline's, the neighbors said that they heard sobbing the night of the murder. It also came to light Caroline had called into work a lot around the time of the incident. So the cops went to Caroline's house and knocked on the door. There was no answer, so they broke that door down. The apartment was a mess, and they found Caroline face down on the floor, but there was no Rachel to be found. Also in Caroline's apartment were all these notebooks scattered about, and in the notebooks was all this stuff she had written about Rachel. She was even trying to change her name to Rachel. So with this evidence, they went to the hospital to question her, and she cracked quick under pressure. She started spilling her guts about everything, how she strangled her, shipped her to her dad's house as a statue, and left her out on the creek to rot. Her defense tried to blame mental abuse, but the DA was like, shut up. You wrote everything out on your notebooks. We have everything, a detailed plan. You even wrote bullet points. It's over for you. Yeah, they sentenced her to 25 years. I don't think we're ever going to forget that sweet dancing Rachel. Do you have a crime story you'd like to hear about? Leave it in the comments. This one's a bit graphic. Do you think you and your baby mama have issues? Let me introduce you to Catherine Knight, one of the craziest psychos from Australia you will ever hear about. She grew up with a very dark childhood in Australia, being raped by her uncle at an early age, and then when she finally started having sex on her own, she would go to her mother's telling her that she didn't like some of the things that fellas would make her do, and her mom told her to just suck it up and put up with it. This made her go even more crazy. She started assaulting classmates. When she left high school, she couldn't even read or write. This didn't stop her from getting her dream job, cutting organs out of animals. At this meat factory she worked at, she met her first lover, David. Yo, he was a lucky one. He was with her for 5 years, and after suffering so much abuse, he ended the relationship. Catherine went to the hospital for depression, but on her way to the hospital, she placed her newborn baby on the railroad tracks. Don't worry. The baby was rescued by a homeless man seconds before the train came. When she got out of the hospital, she cut someone and demanded them to give her a ride to go find her ex. So cops put her in an even more secure mental hospital. When she got out of the mental hospital, a long-term friend of hers named John was trying to play Captain Save-A-Ho and decided to let her move in even though he'd known her for years and knew how crazy she was. That's his own damn fault. And it wasn't long before she started going crazy. She got him fired from his job. She would beat him and smack him around, and after 5 years, he'd had enough. He got a restraining order, and he told his friends, if you don't ever see me again, it means she killed me. I mean, what did he think was gonna happen? Shortly after that, he didn't show up at work. The neighbors and co-workers were concerned, so the cops went to his house. No one answered the door, so they broke in, and they found his body skinned like an animal. She stabbed him 38 times and skinned him with the stab wounds intact. She had decapitated him, put his head in a pot, and boiled it with vegetables. She had taken other parts of him and prepared it with vegetables and had it cut up and on a plate for his kids, which were due to be home within the next hour. With the pot still going, they knew someone was home. As they searched the back of the house, they found Catherine passed out on pills. She was obviously arrested and sentenced to life. They even added a new clause called never to be released added to her sentence. She will forever reside at Silverwater Correctional. I'd like to know what you think in the comments. Yo, this is a story about Natalie and Michael. What a cute little couple. Natalie was quiet, smart, good mother. Mike was a diehard jock. They went to college, did everything the right way. As soon as they got out of college, they started their own business and they made lots of money. And they went on lots of spending sprees. They bought everything, new cars, new clothes, vacation homes, everything designer. But after a couple years, the cracks started to show. It all started when Natalie, who was the chairman of this baseball league, got investigated for fraud. A private detective found that there were 30 grand in fraud made with the baseball league's business. When asked about this, she always came up with an excuse. Either the government had setbacks. One time she said she had cancer. And then when they were almost out of money, they had an appointment at a bank, but they never made that appointment. They were homesick. Natalie told Michael's mom they had flu-like symptoms. When Michael's mom asked her to take him to the hospital, she said no, that he'd just feel better in the morning. Friends came over later that day and saw him in a coma-like state. A good friend who was also a nurse came over later that day. Her name was Stephanie. She said in his condition, he needs to go to the hospital right now. now, and only then did that worthless wife of his take him to the ER. At the ER, the doctor said he had swelling of the brain and low glucose. When questioned about this, Natalie said that he took insulin for his steroids. She also told Michael's mom not to come to the hospital, that no one else was allowed in. Michael's mom knew this was a lie, and she came anyway. And at the hospital, she noticed Natalie acting real weird, not acting like a concerned wife, not really caring too much. Unfortunately, the healthy 38-year-old died just a few days later. At first, there was no autopsy because they didn't think it was any foul play, so they buried Michael. The cops weren't done yet. They still had several search warrants for their other companies' frauds suspicions. While conducting their searches, they found insulin, all types of documents. Basically, their whole company was a scam, and they were targeting friends and family. And after all that, they were going to file for bankruptcy. She got 11 years and had to pay $2.5 million in restitution. But wait, there's more. Cops were kind of getting suspicious about his natural cause of death, so they dug that body up. They found copious amounts of insulin in his body. She was immediately charged with murder. She pled not guilty, but the doctor was able to prove that the insulin was recently in his body and not something that he had been taking. I knew she poisoned him. That's sick. And then after the family and friends testified, she got 15 more years. She'll be getting out when she's about 98. Michael will be truly missed by his family. They are able to have a little breath of fresh air knowing that justice was served. Like these kinds of crime stories, you should subscribe. One morning, a sad mother called the cops because her daughter, who was also a mother, she had been missing for over 2 days. The next morning, a maintenance worker discovered a burning body in a vacant lot. This lot was at the end of a long dirt road, only known by locals who lived near the area. When cops showed up to collect the body, her fingertip was still on fire. She had been shot 4 times and burned with gas. There was only a single bullet casing left at the scene for the cops to collect. She was burned so badly, there was only a small heart-shaped tattoo left on her for any type of identification. Also found were her burnt clothes and a locket. The cops knew someone was missing her. While checking security cameras, they saw the victim gotten into a white car. Also, the remote area that she was dumped in was only 5 minutes from the airport. So they started checking the back records of anyone who'd been arrested in the area. They discovered this gentleman was arrested a couple months back with the same caliber of gun that was used in the murder. Questions, he said that the gun was owned by his friend. So when they approached the friend's house, what do you know, pulling out of the driveway was a white car. When they pulled him over to question him, they realized he was also a cop. During the interrogation, he admitted that he's been picking up girls on Craigslist for years now. He even ran down the whole process. There was even a video on his phone of them two interacting moments before the murder apparently took place. They dropped him off at a friend's house to go to search his home. At his home, they found everything. The condoms with her and his DNA on it, bullet casings, the clothes. I mean, this guy couldn't have done a better job of handing the case over to the detectives. Cops also found video of him buying duct tape, rope, gas cans. I mean, this guy was not very smart at all. But during court, he lied and said that she was the one that was trying to rob him. But the DAs just said the wounds did not add up. He was found guilty and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. We all know what happens to cops in prison, don't we? To the family of Vernisha Woodford, I hope you're able to finally have peace. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Got this loser, his name is Steven. He's in and out of jail. And then you got this amazing, beautiful soul, sweet little gay dude named George. George liked to help people in need. He was loved by his whole community. Steven murdered him, stole his credit cards, went on a shopping spree. George thought his girlfriend was going to help him cover his tracks. Boy, was he wrong. During the interrogation, the cops asked her specific questions. Did you just get a big screen TV in the living room? She said, yeah. Steven said, no. She said, I'm not lying to the cops. She looked at the cops and said, you can have anything you want. Cops said, can we have the phone data? She said, anything you want. She left that room like, bye, motherfucker. Steven's left sitting there. The cops are basically like, look, we have everything, bro. We're not idiots. This is a homicide investigation. He still tried to act stupid. During the second interview, when they really brought down the heat, he asked for a lawyer. Didn't really matter though. He got life sentence without the possibility of parole. George Diaz Johnston, the people who you helped will never forget you. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you on the next one. This one's pretty messed up. When this grandma missed picking up her kids, everyone knew something was wrong. She was also involved in a case that was 25 years old. When her daughters showed up to check on her mother, she found the door locked. Unable to gain access, she waited for her dad to get home. When they unlocked the door, they found her mother wrapped in a blanket, and she had a bloody towel around her head. The scene pointed to drug and alcohol overdose, but the police had their suspicions. After a thorough search, they discovered the whole scene had been staged. Parts of the house had blood that had been cleaned up in certain areas, but not in others. The autopsy report showed she had no alcohol in her system at all. She did have a high level of fentanyl, but also signs that she had not been a fentanyl user. The medical examiner said that she struggled before her death and she died of strangulation. Even though they lived together and DNA was everywhere, there were some places the DNA should not have been, like on the syringes, as well as so much underneath her fingernails. Her sister Tammy used to date Greg as well. Back in '93, when she tried to leave him, she went missing. Very suspicious of Greg, Martha told the cops that she was going to go undercover to get clues to bring her killers to justice. But instead of getting any information for the police, she instead fell in love and started a relationship with him. Even had her kids call him dad. Greg even sued the police department for $45,000. And the case went cold. And after being with him for 14 years, she decided that she was done. She tried to get an attorney and start the process. 4 months later, she was dead. When they arrested Greg, they also opened the old cold case against him. He pleaded not guilty. Friends of Greg's testified that he had a strangulation fetish. When asked simple questions on the stand, he seemed confused. It took them about 13 and a half seconds to find him guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison. Martha, I don't even know what to say to you. You should have known better. I mean, what were you thinking? Yo, she should have listened. This girl Jaden, right? She was dating this guy Ben. He's 5 years older than her. He's a drug addict, a loser, drinking all the time. Anyway, after a couple weeks of dating, the family notices bruises and scrapes on her body. They tell her, girl, you need to stay away from him. She said no, that she loved him. She would steal her mom's electronics, pawn them, and give the money to Ben for drugs. Her mom had enough and kicked her out, so she moved into this hostel. The workers there could tell that she was being controlled by Ben. She wouldn't leave her room, she was scared to eat. I mean, it was crazy. He would go crazy, threatening, saying he had people watching her. She was scared. Shortly after that, she got pregnant. So when she broke the news to Ben, thinking he'd be excited, he flipped out. Tried to accuse her of being with some other people. It was crazy. So she left him, and it seemed like for a couple weeks her life was getting better. And then out of the blue, Ben hits her up like, hey, let's get back together. I want a family. So she told the people at the hostel, hey, I'm gonna go and see my ex real quick, he wants to make up. And they were like, girl, you better not. It's a bad idea. She was like, nah, it's alright, he's being sweet. And they were like, girl, you better not go. I'm telling you, don't do it. But she went anyway. And then she went missing. So after the cops pulled up CCTV footage, they found them together going to some faraway place about 2 hours out of town on the train. And then he came back all by himself, acting real suspect. When they questioned his grandmother, she stated how he borrowed 2 shovels and a suitcase a couple days earlier. So they arrested him up real quick. He acted like he could care less. During the interview, he's like, look, I don't even know where she's at. I don't even care where she's at. Why are you even asking me? So they sent cadaver dogs to the house, and the cadaver dogs hit on a body, but no body was found. So they started questioning all the family members, and the brother cracked like an egg under pressure. He told them everything, how everything went down, and how they buried the body in their uncle's grave. The cops dug up that body and charged him with murder. During the trial, his girlfriend testified that he used to beat her all the time and threaten her life on multiple occasions. Took the jury about 4 minutes and 13 seconds to find him guilty. Well, he will spend the rest of his life in prison. Hopefully, Jaden's family can have a little peace, knowing their little angel is no longer in torment. Hey, if you like crime, drop me a like. Todd Morgan was a wonderful father of 2. But when he didn't show up to get his daughter from school, his loved ones knew it was an issue. So after searching his house, they found him on his living room floor. He had been shot. The neighbors said that he had seen a small framed woman with long hair leave the scene earlier that morning. So then they went and talked to the ex-girlfriend. She said that he wasn't in a relationship and she was unsure about who would have done this. The only lead they had to go on at this point was a 911 call that had been placed that morning coming from the same address as the murder. After tracing that call back to its owner, it ended up to be a Tieriona Shal. So they went and scooped her up. During the interview, she acted like she had no clue about Todd or anything about him. But the condom wrappers left at the scene told a totally different story. During court, she tried to plead and cry and ask for forgiveness. Well, they forgave her, and they gave her 20 years to life. So she'll have a little bit of time to think about what she did. Our hearts go out to you, Todd. Let me tell you about this story of Tiffany and her boyfriend, Chris. Everything seemed cool at first. A happy little life. They got married. They were both massage therapists. They got a studio together. They had a wonderful thing going for a couple of years. But then Chris decided he was going to have him a little affair. The affair lasted for about 2 years. You know, you have to give it to Tiffany. The way she handled it was pretty good. She forgave him. She never forgot. As the years passed by, Chris got a little more aggressive, you could say. Right about the same time, Tiffany met this new guy. His name was Jake. They met at work. They really hit it off. She enjoyed texting him. She never went to his house or anything. But one night, when Chris came home, Tiffany had made some soup for him. So he ate the soup, and then he says things like, "Why do you make this greasy soup? You know I don't like this shit." And I think Tiffany had enough, because she texted Jake and she was like, "You know what? I've had enough. I want to come over." So Jake gave her the address, and she went over. And she stayed 5 days doing, well, you know what. Then when she came back, she told Christopher she wanted a divorce. Chris begged and pleaded with her. He was like, "Please, please, don't get a divorce. Let's do counseling. Like, I'll do anything." She was like, "Nope. The damage is done." She filed for divorce, and she wanted to go back over to Jake's house. But Christopher was like, "Nah, you're not taking either one of my cars over to Jake's house. I can take you and drop you off." She's like, "You're not dropping me off at his house." He was like, "Well, I'll take you close enough. I can drop you off and you can figure it out." And she's like, "Okay." That was the last that anyone ever heard from her again. He handcuffed her and then shot her in the head. And then he chopped her up into 16 pieces and stuffed her in garbage bags. And then he hid her out back in her shed. He tried to get one of his buddies, Randy, to help him. Called him up in the middle of the night, said, "Come over here, I need your help." Randy shows up. Chris is like, "Look, I shot my wife." Showed him a picture. "I need your help disposing the body." Randy's like, "Hell nah." Hell nah. And Christopher said, "If you don't help me, I'm going to go inside right now, kill all my daughters, kill you, go to your house, and kill all your family." So he helped him move the body from the house out to this shed. So of course, Randy goes to the cops and tells them this, and the cops immediately get a search warrant for his house and show up with the search warrant. When they execute the search warrant, they find everything. The house was a bloody mess. They break into the shed in the back, they find the garbage cans, they find everything. During the interrogation, Chris was all acting like, "Oh, I just dropped her off at her boyfriend's house. That was the last time I seen her." He didn't even know the cops were at his house. They'd already found her body and everything, so he just looked like a total idiot. They let him finish telling his little lies, and then they locked him up, where he still resides. The trial only lasted for 5 days, and it only took them 3 hours to find him guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During his sentencing, the judge really chewed his ass. May you rest in peace, Tiffany Morrison. The details of this story is really going to have you baffled. This girl was strangled to death, but seen alive before she died of strangulation. I know, it's crazy. Let's get into it. First, I'd like to welcome you back to my channel. I appreciate all the comments and positive feedback. If you're new here, I'd like to say welcome. We talk about true crime, When you feel I've earned it, you go ahead and click that subscribe button, and you can be part of our community too. Now let's get into it. The story starts off in Austin with an amazing woman. Her name is Jessica. She's very driven. She has 2 jobs. She works at a grocery store, and she has another job as a nurse. She's training to be a nurse full time, but it's a long journey. She was actually saving for her master's degree and doing a good job of it too. She was always positive about everything. Even when people would laugh at her, she would just laugh with them. She would always look for the happy parts of every situation. All her friends loved hanging out with her. She was always the responsible one. Most of the times when they went out, she was the designated driver. And it was just at one of these barbecues that was the last time her friends ever saw her. As the night was coming to an end, she was driving everyone home. Her friend had asked her if she wanted to sleep over so she wouldn't have to drive all the way home. But she declined, saying she had to get dog food and get back to her dog. She was very responsible. The next day, she missed work. And her friends, they knew definitely something was wrong. 'Cause, this girl never, ever missed work. Ever. So they contacted her family, and her family immediately contacted the police because, she's never went missing for anything. She was 23 years old, and she still texted her mom at night letting her know, hey, this is where I'm going to be at, and everything's cool. But that text didn't come in that night. So the cops immediately tracked her phone, and it pinged right away to her car. And her car was located in this busy intersection where there was all kinds of little shops. Her car happened to be in front of the Little Caesars. So when the cops found the car, it was a pretty horrific scene. First of all, as they approached the car, it looked like the whole car had been covered in feces. Gross. They were afraid to open the door because it was over 90-something degrees that day and the humidity was intense. But when they did, it was even a worse scene. Jessica was brutally beaten. She had scratches all over her. You could tell she had been strangled. It was sad. They asked witnesses in the area, and several people stated that they had seen her throughout the day, several hours sitting in her car, being weird, doing weird stuff with her hands, and just looked like she was confused. They didn't know what's going on, but no one offered her any help. No one went over to see if she needed anything. God, that's why I hate society sometimes. Anyway, so she had to have died sometime after that in her car. So the cops checked all the CCTV footage from the night before, and they saw her going to the store, just like her friend had said, getting dog food, going back to her car. But then they noticed something strange. There was a man following her. He followed her all throughout the store, and then backed out through the parking lot. You could see him getting into her car, driving off, and then you see him coming back later, getting in his truck in the early morning hours, and driving away. So they tracked this man down. His name was Crispin. He had no problem coming in for an interview, and he said that him and Jessica had met on a pay-for-play site, and that they were just having a casual encounter. Her friends knew this was bullshit because she wasn't a hoe. But the times did match. He did leave her at a certain time. He was back at his truck. He did leave. She was seen on camera in front of the Little Caesars. So this really started to make cops question what was really going on. They thought because she was acting crazy in her car, maybe she was on drugs. So they sent in a toxicology report, a full 9-panel report. And it came back, you won't believe it, clean as a whistle. She had no drugs in her body. This just made the mystery even crazier. What could have happened? Then the autopsy report came out, and guess what it said? Death by strangulation and asphyxiation. So the cops were thinking the whole time that she died from the heat and the humidity. So this just shattered all of their thoughts. So how did she die of strangulation when the guy that apparently strangled her was gone hours before she died? This just did not make any sense, and the case grew cold, and years passed by. And then, by chance, a college professor did a study. It was a study on asphyxiation and strangulation. It's called death by choke. Look it up. What it is someone can get strangled so hard that they don't die right away. They're unconscious for a little bit and they seem dead, but they're actually still alive. They'll regain consciousness, but they're not all quite there. their brain starts shutting down piece by piece by piece. So what had happened was, after he strangled her, he put her back in her car, and then he went back to his truck and left, thinking she was dead. She woke up a couple hours later, but she was basically halfway dead. Her brain had already started shutting down, so she was able to move her hands and move her face and move her body around. But if you would have tried to talk to her, she would not have been able to respond correctly. She would have been in like a weird daze. Her brain was slowly shutting down, and eventually it shut all the way down, all of her body parts as well. So that explains why there is feces all over her car. I mean, it was just a crazy mess in there. Let's just hope that her brain was totally shut down before her body did. The whole thing is just such a tragic, sad story. As soon as the cops got the autopsy report, they immediately arrested Crispin. He tried to lie and say that he was not involved in any way, but the facts showed otherwise. The whole trial process was even crazy. Once they got all the evidence, the first trial ended up being a mistrial because the DA mishandled all kinds of evidence, and the family was so concerned that he was going to get away. But 2 years later, they had a retrial, and they found him guilty on all counts, and they sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He's had like 4 appeals since then. None of them it went through. Looks like he's dying in jail, baby. Jessica Callaher, our hearts go out to you. You died a horrible death. We hope no one has to go through that. May you rest in peace. I'll see you guys on the next one. This story, bro, this story is crazy. Our story starts in Philadelphia. You have this cute little Puerto Rican couple. Her name was Luzanda. His name was Pedro. They lived in a huge 2-story house. They had 2 sons and 1 little baby girl. And then one normal Saturday, after an unexpected visit from a family member, there's smoke everywhere. Fires ablaze, the walls are lit up, it's crazy. But fortunately, the neighbors saw everything, had called the cops showed up. They literally had the fire put out in 14 minutes. But the upstairs of the house was totally obliterated. So Luz and Pedro started backtracking on the events of the day. The only thing that was out of the ordinary was this unexpected visit from this family member, Carolyn. She was his cousin by marriage. He hadn't even seen her in 6-7 years. Luz, she never even met her. She just shows up out of the blue one day. They didn't even know that Carolyn had their address. Anyway, Carolyn just shows up out of the blue, acting like she needed help with her brakes. Hey cousin, can you help me with my brakes? I haven't seen you in 6 years, but I need your help all of a sudden. Pedro's cool. He's cool. He's like, hey, alright, yeah, let me see. Put him on the jack. He starts working on her brakes. Realizing that it's going to take a little while for him to check everything out, Luz invites Carolyn inside. I mean, she's family after all, you know what I mean? So they're trying to be hospitable. She shows her the baby, talking about the baby. Carolyn said, oh, I also just had a baby just a couple months ago as well. They're going to get along great and play together and be such good friends when they grow up. She had crazier ideas in mind. And then Pedro comes back in the house like, yo, your brakes aren't even that bad. What are you talking about? So of course she lies and is like, oh, I heard him making this weird little noise. But thank you for taking a look. She got back in her car, drove down the street. A couple blocks down, she told her driver, whoa, I forgot my purse. We gotta go back. The driver heads back to the house. Thinking Carolyn was gone, Pedro and Luz, they went back inside to just chill out. I mean, it was Saturday after all. They're just trying to kick it, you know. They worked all week. Luz put her daughter down for a nap, started watching TV with the boys downstairs. Pedro was outside doing something. I don't even know. And then there was a loud thud. Boom. It came from the upstairs bedroom. The same bedroom where Delamar was sleeping. So Luz gets up, runs upstairs. There's smoke everywhere filling the room. She opens the door, flames crawling up the walls. I mean, oh my God, what's going on? She gets to the crib to grab her baby. There's no baby. She looks around. The window's open. She never has the window open. She's freaking out. She starts coughing, can barely breathe, falls to the floor, crawls out the room, crawls down the stairs. She goes outside where thankfully her sons are there. And Pedro. But no baby. But Luz, she wasn't having none of that bullshit. She was like, look, I went up them stairs and looked in my daughter's crib before the fire took over completely and there was no baby in my crib. Except she didn't speak English. And the cops didn't speak Spanish. So as far as they were concerned, that was that. And the case was closed. And the parents were devastated. I mean, devastated. Luz knew she wasn't an idiot. She knew her daughter wasn't gone. But there was nothing they could do. I mean, what are you going to do? As devastated as they were, Pedro and Luz, they just knew Carolyn had something to do with this. And even though there was nothing they could do, that's definitely what they knew. So 6 years pass. And then just as fate would have it, Grandma decides to have a birthday party for the whole family. I mean, we're talking about a Hispanic family now. Like, sometimes that could be up to like 300 people. I mean, they're all invited. And it's a wonderful event. They're partying, slowly simmering carnitas and bacon fat. Oh my God. Anyway, everybody's having a good time. Kids are running around. Luz, Pedro's there. Their kids are there. And what happens? What do they see? They see this little 6-year-old running around. When she smiles, she looks just like Luz. And her complexion looks just like Pedro. So they like hang back and kind of talk to each other a little bit like, oh my God, is this real? Are you seeing this? I don't know. Are you seeing? So they come up with a plan. After they all eat and they're playing games out back, Luz calls the little girl over and says, hey, you got a little gum in your hair. Let me get it out for you. She's messing around with her hair. There's no gum in her hair, obviously. But anyway, she plucks 3 little hairs anyway and puts them right into a bag. And then as soon as the birthday party's over with, she took those hairs right to the DNA testing center. And what do you think those results were? What do you think? What do you think the results were? The results were that was their kid. They were excited, happy, and fucking pissed. Since they hadn't had much luck with the police before, they really didn't know what to do. So what they did was turn to their local state representative, who was also Puerto Rican. Once they explained everything to him and showed him all of the facts, he was enraged. He went to the police department and made sure this case was taken care of. They immediately arrested Carolyn. I mean, they didn't even ask her any questions, just turn around. Put your hands behind your back. She was arrested for kidnapping, assault, arson, child endangerment, and other offenses. During questioning, Carolyn was a little weird with her responses. She was cuckoo. So they had her evaluated, and it turned out she had pseudo-CSS, which is pretty much when you think you're pregnant when you're not pregnant. So the investigation uncovered that a couple months back, Carolyn told her current boyfriend that she was pregnant, but she knew she didn't have a baby. So she concocted this crazy scheme where she was going to steal her cousin's baby and raise it as her own, in which she was successful for 6 years. But now everything's coming to light. They immediately placed Delamar back in her real parents' custody. And then they slapped her with 30 years in the penitentiary. Bitch deserves every day. Oh, we're not done yet. Pedro and Luz, they were furious because they knew they were right the whole time. So they called the best lawyer in town. They sued the city of Philadelphia. They sued the Philadelphia Police Department. They sued the Philadelphia Chief Medical Examiner. And they sued Philadelphia PD. Psh, they claim it was an inaccurate investigation. I mean, it was obvious it was an inaccurate investigation. But then as the dust settled, the Veras were able to go on with their life. Because of the story, they were approached by Lifetime and other media outlets, and they eventually signed contracts and deals. There was even a documentary made about her. You guys should check it out. It's called Little Lost Girl. It was a Lifetime documentary. You know, I just gotta say that, I mean, it's really sweet to just have such an amazing happy ending on this one. Delamar found love. She's now happily married. And her, Luz, and Pedro will spend many years making memories. I hope you enjoyed this one. I'll see you on the next one. Yeah, this is Chloe. She's pretty pissed. She tried setting up one of her good friends, Terrence Robinson, known as a little local drug dealer. Chloe ordered up 100 hits of ecstasy. When Terrence showed up, he was met by Keenan, Chloe's ex-boyfriend, and his friend Benjamin. They pulled a gun and said, "Give me your drugs." Terrence was like, "Nah." So they shot him, and he died. When the cops searched through Terrence's phone, they saw the text messages bringing them to Chloe. In the interrogation room, you could tell Chloe was never told no as a child. She's being told no now. Just look how she acts. But it didn't matter. All the crying and screaming and kicking and slapping. In the end, the judge gave her 20 years for second-degree murder. Keenan got life behind bars. Benjamin got 18 years. Do you think this little girl was raised right? Let me know in the comments section. Today's victim, 24-year-old Tiffany Adams, last seen on November 17th, 2014. She lived in Sullivan, Indiana, with a population of under 4,000. It was a small community. She was 8 months pregnant at the time. Now let's look at the suspects. This is her boyfriend, Donnie. They had a great relationship, but unfortunately, after she went missing, he skipped town. This is her father. His name is Bruce. Bruce loved Tiffany like no other. He said he went to the store, and upon his return, she was gone. The cops checked his alibi, and it checked out. Then we have her stepfather, Brian. What an asshole. Tiffany hated Brian, constantly made posts about how he controlled her mother, and she did not approve of him at all or his actions. He was a very angry, controlling person. So the cops had their work cut out for them. And as you would know it, a few months later, her body was found in a field, decomposed by some farmers. She was found with a red sweater tied around her neck, and her cell phone was with her body. So the cops went through her cell phone, and right before she died, guess who she had been texting several times? Was it Donnie, her boyfriend? Was it her father, Bruce? Was it her stepdad, Brian? No, it was none of the above. It was her stepbrother, Jonah. He secretly hated his stepsister for years and had planned on killing her as soon as she made posts about her father. Even in jail, he told his cellmates how he enjoyed killing her. He got 2 life sentences because she was pregnant when she died. 13-year-old Lauren is walking home after school with her friend Michaela. Out of nowhere, shots rang out. There were no witnesses. There were no leads. This is the case of Lauren Landavazo. Welcome to Glitch Pulse Crime. Alright, this case brings us to Wichita Falls, Kansas. This story is about a 13-year-old little sweet girl very caring, compassionate, always laughing, always playing with friends. Just really loved life, really enjoy having a good time. Every day, she would walk to school with her friend Michaela. It was always the same path, it was always the same friend. On this particular day, things took a turn for the worse. She was walking home with her friend Michaela, and then a vehicle pulls up, and then shots rang out. Michaela and Lauren both were shot and laying on the ground. Her mom was expecting her to be home from school by this time, and her mom's friend pulls up and says, "Hey, is Lauren here?" Her mom said, "No, why?" Her friend said, "There's some kids down. You need to come quick." As her mom runs to the scene, she sees her daughter laying on the ground, just staring at her face. She knew that she was gone. Her dad could not accept it. He rode in the ambulance, and on the way to the hospital, he heard the paramedics say, "We have a heartbeat." But unfortunately, it turned out to be a false heartbeat, and she died from her wounds at the hospital later that day. People were crying and upset in the streets. You had Democrats and Republicans both joining together to mourn what had happened. The cops even told the mom, "Look, we may never find who did this." But out of the two girls, Michaela lived. She was able to give the cops a description. She said it was a guy with shaggy hair, and he was driving a gold SUV. So the cops in the whole neighborhood were scouring for this gold SUV. And it didn't take them long. When the cops pulled up on it and sat back a little bit and observed, guess who they saw? A guy with shaggy hair. He was pulling a rifle out or something, trying to conceal it, wrap it in a sheet. The cops knew they had their guy. So they just simply waited and followed him as he took off down the road. And then when he got to a stoplight, they switched on them lights, baby, pulled him right over. After running his license plate, they saw it was Cody Loft, a 20-year-old. He lived within a couple blocks of Lauren. As they pulled him over, they asked him to consent to a search. Cody knew he'd already cleaned the vehicle, so he consented. But he didn't clean it good enough, because what did they find? They found brass knuckles and they found a shell casing. In Texas, brass knuckles will get you arrested. And that's exactly what happened. They snatched him right up, brought him in for questioning. In the interrogation, he didn't hold back at all. It was almost like he was excited to explain what he had done to this young girl. He was animated and excited as he spoke. It was rather disgusting. I mean, what is a 20-year-old doing checking out a 13-year-old anyway? Hey, if you've made it this far in the story, why don't you do the little clicky things under the video? It'll really help me out. I appreciate it. Now let's get back to the case. So in the interrogation room, he opened right up. He lived at the house at the end of the block, so he could watch Lauren and Michaela walk home every day. He would watch them. He told the cops that she was the most beautiful girl in the world. Her eyes were the most beautiful thing he had ever seen, and he would watch her every day like a sicko. One day, about a year prior to the incident, he approached Michaela and Lauren, and he tried to talk to Lauren and just say, "Hey, what's up?" But Lauren was rude and told him, "I have a boyfriend." So he started following her, and he would see her with this boyfriend, and he thought that he was a scrubby little dude. He wasn't a man at all. And this angered him, and he became jealous. He also told the cops that he talked to the devil, and that this kill was considered an assassination. I mean, what a sick fuck. He also told him he had fantasies that he just wanted Lauren to treat him right. He just wanted to feel loved by her. I mean, Jesus Christ. So with his confession, it only took the jury less than an hour to find him guilty. Life in prison with no possibility of parole. Plus he got 20 years for the attempted murder of Michaela. We all know it doesn't matter how many years he get, he's going to Texas State Penitentiary, cause we all know what those hogs do in there. They're gonna pass him around like a Twinkie with sprinkles on it. These sweet girls were attacked for no reason. I mean, my heart really goes out to Lauren's parents. I mean, no parent should have to go through what they had to go through. I hope you enjoyed this case. I'll see you on the next one.
But in terms of delivering a baby and it looked like you tried to hide it, we do have to have the police involved.
And nothing was crying. It came out with nothing.
We discovered a dead baby in the bathroom.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. It came out of me and I didn't know what to do.
Lexi, I told you about this.
But
I just asked you, baby, to tell me the truth.
This is a story of Alexi. She told her mom she had some back pain, so her mom took her to the hospital. At the hospital, she said she had to use the bathroom. While in the bathroom, the nurse heard flushing and the water running for like 20 minutes. She then later came out of the bathroom like nothing was wrong. Later, when the cleaning lady was cleaning the bathroom, inside the trash can, they found her newborn baby dead. They called the cops, separated her from her mother. They transported her to a bigger hospital so she could have the proper test. Then she was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Her case has bounced around from court to court, and it's making its way to the New Mexico Supreme Court. If you'd like to follow the details of this case, make sure you give me that subscription. You see this creepy old man turned out to be a serial killer. I'm going to tell you how he was brought to justice. Welcome back, everyone. I'm so excited to share this next case with you. And if this is your first time here, we do true crime. You're more than welcome to join the community. Our victim is 23-year-old Angelica Cluck. Angelica was a sweet little girl. She had just moved to the chapels. She was continuing her studies in religion. She lived in the chapel house out behind the church, and she lived alone. She was very quiet. She always kept to herself. It took her being missing 5 days before people even realized she was gone. When they could not find her, they called specialists to the church, and they searched high and low, and they tore the church apart. They looked in walls, they looked under the floorboards, and that's where they happened to find sweet Angelica Cluck's body. Her mouth had been gagged with tape, and there was blood everywhere. It was going to be very difficult for forensics because the body was underneath the church in dirt, but they managed to retrieve the body. They took swab tests and did an autopsy. The autopsy found that she was killed by blunt force trauma. The swab test showed that her private parts were abused. There were no clues. She had no enemies. There's literally no motive. So the cops scoured the crime scene. And after searching the whole church, they found in the garage several droplets of blood in areas where blood had been cleaned up. They knew it happened in the garage. So the cops started asking friends and anyone close to her if they had any information. They were able to search pretty much everyone that worked at the church and everyone who had come in contact with her except one person. This was the maintenance worker for the chapel, and his name was Pat McLaughlin. The cops ran his history and found out that Pat McLaughlin was not even a real name. After doing some more research, they figured out his name was Peter Tobin. And Peter Tobin was a real sicko. He had previously been in jail for kidnapping young girls. His ex-wife testified in prison that he held her at gunpoint to abuse her private parts. So a manhunt was launched. Warnings went out, his face was on the news, and after a couple days, 400 miles south of this crime scene, A nurse called in and says that she knows Peter, but he went by a new name. His new name was James Kinney. So the cops traveled 400 miles down and they arrested James Kinney, aka Peter Tobin. While he was arrested, they tracked his locations and realized he had murdered 2 other girls. All of his DNA was all over Angelica's body. He was found with a knife on him. This knife had Angelica's DNA on it. His watch had droplets of her blood still on the watch. During questioning, he would not admit to anything. It's okay though, with all the DNA evidence, the cops did not need anything. They sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While in prison, he claimed he murdered 48 girls, but the cops have found no proof of this. However, for the 3 girls that he did kill, we hope your souls rests in peace. I know there's got to be a case you want to hear about. Go ahead and let me know in the comments. And always, thank you for joining me. I'll see you on the next case. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, yo, I want to be a serial killer. But for Richard Beasley and the situations in his life, made it very easy for him to become what he became. Welcome back, all my crime-loving enthusiasts. Today we're talking about the tale of Richard Beasley. As always, I'd love to know what you think about the case in the comments. It started from an early age. He was abused by his dad physically. He was sexually abused by his neighbors. He grew up in Akron, Ohio. I mean, first of all, this place in itself used to be a booming community. Now, man, it's looking pretty run down. People that live there, they gotta try to figure out other ways of means, if you know what I'm saying. Straight out of high school, he tries to become a machinist, but he loses interest. Goes through a couple odd jobs here and there. Nothing really pans out, so he becomes a burglar. A couple months later, he's arrested for burglary. The judge throws the book at him, gives him 40 years, but he actually only serves 4, then he's released. After being released, he heads back to Ohio, and he met this girl, and they got married, and they had some kids, and he was a real good dad too. I mean, a real good dad. I mean, he was there for his daughter 110%. His wife kept begging him to leave the biker gang, but he did not want to. Everything was going good, so she didn't mind. The bills were paid, he was home at night, everything seemed okay. And then she found out he was selling illegal firearms and doing robberies, basically a con man again. How did she find this out, are you wondering? That's a great question. The cops raided her house looking for these firearms. They tore through everything. They flipped her bed, tore open her couch cushions. She was pissed. But they found them guns, and he got sentenced to 7 years. But during that 7 years in jail, he found God, and it seemed to be going good, because as soon as he got out, he immediately becomes pastor. Chaplain Rick, they called him. And he was legitly helping people down on their luck. He helped with soup kitchens, volunteer work. I mean, he was doing this every day until he got hit by a dump truck. And I think this is where his whole world changed. Because he got hit by the dump truck, he broke his bones. And when that happened, he was prescribed Oxycontin. So basically, he got addicted to Oxycontin. But he didn't know it yet. This was just the beginning. So he's prescribed Oxycontin, trying to get over his injuries. He gets a huge lump settlement from being hit by this dump truck. What does he do with the money? All good stuff. Buys a huge house right in downtown Akron, Ohio. Helps the local neighbors around the house. Turns the house into a halfway house. Everyone's saying, yo, Chaplain Ridge is such a great guy. He also befriends this 16-year-old named Brogan. Brogan is younger than him, so he kind of helps him out like a father figure. He helps him around the halfway house doing certain things. Life seemed to be going okay for a while, but the drug addiction was slowly taking over. Slowly but surely, he started scamming the court for money, letting people just coming out of jail stay there, calling it a halfway house. But slowly but surely, Those same poor girls looking for help were turned into prostitutes. When the cops started taking notice, he knew he had to do something because he did not want to go to jail. So he came up with the perfect scheme. I'm just going to find someone that looks like me, unalive them, and assume their identity. How hard could it be? So he places an ad on Craigslist saying he had 600 acres of farmland, he needed a caretaker, basically start a new life, and boy, did he have some responses. He had over 100 replies. So he just went down the list, trying to pick out the ones that were on medication, basic I'm gonna kill you and take all your stuff mentality. His first victim was Ralph Greger. Ralph shows up for the interview, they share a meal together. Ralph, Brogan, and Richard go walking in the wood together. Ralph shot in the head. Richard now becomes Ralph. 2 months later, when he's done selling all of Ralph's things and can no longer pay for drugs, he has to do this again. Post another ad, and here we go. The next victim, David Polly. David drove 10 hours to visit and meet Rich and start this new opportunity. But the same thing happened to him. He was taken for a meal, taken to the woods, unalived in the back of the head. Rich really doesn't waste any time. Within 2 weeks later, he already has his third victim, Scott Davis. But this time, this is where it gets crazy. After the meal and during the walk in the woods, as Scott is about to get shot in the back of the head, he hears a click and turns around and sees Rich standing there with the gun. The gun had misfired. Rich pulls off another shot, but only hitting Scott in the elbow. Scott runs for his life out of the woods straight to the police, gives them all the information. The cops start looking for Richard before he can kill again, but it was too late. He had already had his fourth victim on its way, Tim Kern. Tim shows up, same unfortunate outcome. He was unalived in the back of the head. But with Scott's info, they tracked the Craigslist ad to an IP address, which was tracked to Richard's room. When they went to arrest Richard, he was not there. But who did they find? Logan. And under questioning, Logan cracked. Told them everything. Hell yeah, I helped Richard murder and bury those bodies. It was almost like he was bragging. So they tracked the cell phone and found Richard and arrested him immediately. Brogan and Richard both got charged with murder. The cops were going to give Brogan a lesser sentence of only 20 years if he would testify against Richard. But he did not take that offer. So they gave Brogan life in prison without the possibility of parole. Richard was sentenced to death, as every serial killer should be. You should definitely burn in hell for the people that you killed, Richard. But I have to think to myself, how different life might have been for you if not been hit by that truck. Tell me what you think in the comments.